All right, welcome back to Book Talk, and we're doing another kind of genre discussion today,
Yep.
and the question is Brave New World a tragedy?
Yes. Okay. Am I getting to start this time?
You are.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, that's an interesting question, and we have to kind of, I guess, the definition of tragedy then being, we can use Aristotle's definition, fall of somewhat of high degree. But then there's so many sort of tragic elements to this book too. You have like Helmholtz and Bernard on one side, you have John, and then you could just say all of society too. It's a tragedy for that. So I don't know. Things work out okay for for Helmholtz and Bernard. You know what I mean?
Not so much for John.
Yeah, not so much for John. And things are bad for the society as well. But another, element of tragedy also is that they fall through their own fault or their own doing. And I don't think that's why John falls at all, necessarily. So I don't know. It's tragic for him, and it's and maybe societies they've made that choice. So we can say like our society, which has fallen into the garbage that's the world state. But I don't know for John. It's tragic what happens to him, but I don't know if it's the book necessarily is a tragedy because there's too many other elements at play.
I would kind of agree there. I think maybe if the book started with John,
Right.
but we've got like half the book before we get to John. And I think
Right.
John's the only tragic character in here. Now,
Yes.
how high was ever John?
I don't think he was ever high.
Well, compared to society, he has more lofty sentiments. He's
Right.
more educated in some way. So,
But he's at the bottom of of each society. He's like the total bottom of the society, and so he doesn't have any lofty state there. You're right. The only way you can talk about his lofty state is if you talk about it metaphorically.
well, I think also, after Arthur Miller, he doesn't have to be a prince or someone
Right,
high, right?
right.
He said the human condition has a certain dignity. So,
Yeah.
he could be like a Willy Loman-esque.
Right.
But so much of the book is not centered on John.
Although it ends on him.
Yes, and I would disagree kind of that it has to be the tragic hero's completely own fault. Rember the
Or
Hammer
he's caused by what they do.
but the
though.
Hamartia can be outside of the character's control. They can be kind of
Right.
caught up in the wheels of fate, and
Yeah.
in some way, John is by being dragged into a situation that he has no control over and totally is ill-suited for.
Right.
So I think if this was the second half of the book,
Yeah.
I think then it would look a lot more like a tragedy.
Yeah.
But it takes so long to get to John. Bernard, you can't count that as a tragedy. Bernard's
No.
just a
Well, and
weasel.
he ends
It's
up,
like,
it ends up good for him, and even he realizes it finally through his friend that where he's going is actually going to be a better place for him.
yeah. So I think there are tragic elements. I think there's intentionally tragic elements,
Right.
and that's of course like all given through John's constant quoting of Shakespeare and predominantly Shakespeare's
Yes,
tragedies.
exactly.
So that's meant to kind of call up this, and then to have us see John maybe in a little bit of
Right,
that
and
role.
to end with this kind of like suicide. The question is John just really, are we supposed to, I don't know, okay, let me just throw this out. Are we supposed to even like John at all? Or really is John all there as a plot device by Huxley, and really his purpose is to critique the society more than anything else? So that by his suicide, what's more important than John's suicide is that that's the final nail in the coffin for any hope that this society will ever change. That, any little voice of dissonance is so easily snuffed out with the concept that life will just continue as always. Almost by the end of it, you get the sense that Lenina has moved on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She shows up with her old boyfriend, and there's the sense that, after a couple of somas, even she won't really think back on John all that much. So even as John's suicide, as tragic as it is that a plot device by Huxley for the larger purpose of showing that the key tragedy of this book is watching our own society degrade itself into the world state?
Yes, I think he is. I think he is, because I don't think any of the characters in Brave New World are great. I don't think it's supposed to be a character sketch. There's no Holden Caulfield in here. There isn't even a Winston from 1984 in here who were with much more and much more deeply. This is all political allegory. This is, I think that's it. I mean, there's brilliant ideas. It's a great political allegory, but it suffers from the problems of that too. Like when we get like Mustafa Mon is like general exposition, like through the whole thing, and these like big long lectures
voice,
and everything.
The Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's his primary concern in here. So and that might also hold John back from being a tragic hero, because the tragic hero is absolutely the center of the tragedy.
Right, like in Frankenstein.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, we could debate whether it's the monster or Victor, but both of them fall. Yes. Both of them take that their moment in the spotlight.
Yes, yeah.
Both of them openly even like there's like these extemporaneous like passages where they think about themselves as tragic figures and have fallen down. There's nobody in here ever thinks, I mean, John never thinks, oh, I have so fallen.
Yes,
nobody thinks that in this book at all. He's this closest
so there's no
gets to self-awareness.
No, there's no moment of self-realization and everything.
Right. Well, maybe we do the tiniest shred at the end when John realizes what he's done and then kills himself. That's as close as we get. Where he like thinks back over the night and says, "Oh my God!" And then we cut to his hanging feet. That's about as close as we get. But in Frankenstein, there's long speeches where we get the main character, pontificating about his both of their falls. There's nothing like this in here. There's no speech from John thinking, what have I done? All of my lofty sentiments, Soma has destroyed them all.
And it's also it's something, I love Arthur Miller's definition about it, by making it has to be something about the dignity of the human condition. It's the dignity of the human condition in the face of this idea that we can't ever overcome our condition, that fate has us in its clutches, that and there's kind of a dignity and a bravery even as they go down in flames about this as well. And I don't know, maybe John has that a little bit, but John's own worldview is screwed up. Not that like Macbeth's worldview isn't screwed up or all these others, but I would say
because his worldview is Shakespeare. It's not even the Bible.
No,
because he's never given a Bible. The only Christianity John knows is through the lens of Shakespeare.
It's always like Jesus and what is it, Pukong or something?
There's like the fragments left of religion, but it's not like he's getting his ethical system from the Bible or from Christ. He's getting his ethical system from Shakespeare, who was a Christian, and so it's this like second-hand ethos that is like trickling down to him. So it's all messed up anyway. So it's hard to say he's lost this big lofty ethical state when his ethical state has always been secondhand and problematic anyway. I mean, he reflects more or less what we feel. So we feel bad when he goes down in flames at the end because he's the closest to like a human that we know in this book. But I mean, if it was a book of normal people and John would be the super messed up character here. He only looks normal in contrast to everybody else in the book. Well, kind of branching off of that.
Maybe Lenina. Lenina, in some ways, is the person striving to be kind of, in some ways, I guess, most human, because she wants this monogamous relationship. She loses it all at the end and gets kind of sucked in. Gets kind of sucked back into the society.
Where she just believes the society, believes the system. So maybe how she ends up is more tragic in a way, even though he ends up dead, because he dies with his ethical system intact, whereas Lenina gets the little blip of an ethical system of a soul, and then immediately it's gone in a wash of Soma and various other stuff. By the end of it, she's kind of calling out to John, but it seems more like she's just part of the spectacle than anything else. If she was really interested in John, she would have flown out there by herself, not with a camera crew. And
she tries, but she doesn't know how, right? She tries to date him. She thinks she's showing him that she likes him by like stripping down butt naked in front of him. Hey, I like you. This is how we show it.
She's there with her old boyfriend. You know what I mean?
Well, at the end. That's at the end. That's after John's already threatened to kill him, and she's had to lock herself in the bathroom.
That's what I mean. By the end of it, she's reverted to type. Maybe that's what's so tragic, is that we saw this little glimmer of like Lenina's possible future, and it's just gone. It's gone without any commentary.
And with that ananeresis, I'm trying to think of an example. where the tragic hero at the end doesn't get a glimmer of how they've screwed up.
Right.
Macbeth tries to return to his
Right.
old heroic,
That's
I'm
a
going to
part
die in
of the
battle.
tragic.
Yeah.
That's a part of tragedy. Capital
Hamlet
T
sees,
tragedy.
there's Providence in the fall of a sparrow.
Everyone sees it, or
Um,
like, oh my goodness, I look at
Mhm.
what's his name, Horatio,
Mhm.
and realize, oh, not Horatio, who's the brother of Ophelia.
Laertes.
Laertes.
Yeah.
He looks at Laertes and thinks, oh my goodness, I see my own grief reflected in what
Yes,
have I done to
I
him.
understand.
I
yeah.
understand it. So, but there's none of that with Lenina.
You're right,
None at
yeah.
all. At the end of it, she's just showing up with her old boyfriend, hoping for more. So
All right,
I don't know. So is it a tragedy or not? It's tragic at the end, but I don't know if it's a tragedy. I don't know
wouldn't
if it's
call
a
it.
capital T tragedy or even a lowercase
It's
t
got
tragedy.
tragic echoes and elements, but not. I wouldn't ever classify this within that genre.
Yeah, even though it tends to, it's ending like a lot of the other well-known tragedies.
Mhm.
You know, it has a similar end, but not necessarily tragedy.
No.
No.